Hey, today is May 22nd, 2024. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline. I'm joined, as always, by Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford.
Lots to talk about today, Derek.
Sure is. And Western Standard senior Alberta columnist Cory Morgan.
Good afternoon. Evening. I don't know. It stays light so long now, I'm confused. I'm a simple creature.
It really messes things up.
Yeah, spring.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've got a good show today. A bit more international than usual. A bit more outside of Alberta, actually. Germany, the Bundestag has their parliament has voted to decriminalize child pornography. Oh, the algorithms are going to hate us now, so I need to mention that. But I don't have a lot of faith in Germany's government, but when I saw this one, I had to do a double take and check and see if this one was correct. But yes, Germany's Bundestag has voted to decriminalize child pornography, moving it from a regular criminal offense to a minor misdemeanor. Well, and speaking of some evil Germans, unfortunately, Klaus Schwab, retiring from his post as the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, stepping back into more of a background role. We're going to be talking about that. Real funny story. Funny if you're a sucker for punishment like me. Ottawa has paid, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation found out, has paid $12 million in taxpayers' money to shoot deer on Vancouver Island. Yes, you heard that right. Especially all of you watching on the Wild TV network, you're apparently incapable of shooting deer for free. That's why Justin Trudeau has paid foreigners $12 million to shoot deer on Vancouver Island with weapons that he has otherwise declared illegal for us to use. Spain, Norway, and Ireland just today have recognized Hamas. Yes, Hamas, the genocidal terrorist organization, close cousins of Al-Qaeda. They are, believe it or not, the legitimately elected government of Palestine and currently ruling over the Gaza half of that territory, while they've recognized it as a state. So that'll be interesting when we talk about Spain's relationship with Catalonia, won't it?
Mm-hmm. Certainly will.
Yeah. And federal environment Mr. Stephen Guilbeault had a recent appearance before a parliamentary committee. No real way to put it shortly here, but we're calling it his carbon tax bullshisa bomb. Quite a contradiction in facts, more or less an admission, unintentionally by the federal government, that the carbon tax, surprise, does nothing to save the earth. All right, well, let's get into it. We're going to start in the old country. Germany's Bundestag, the Bundestag is the lower house of the Reichstag, has voted to decriminalize child pornography. Now, that doesn't mean it's not an offense at all, but it means it's moving from... I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to bring in the reporter who broke the story for us on the Western Standard here, Alberta reporter Jen Hodgson, coming to us right now live from our newsroom. Jen, tell us what the heck happened in Germany's Bundestag with child porn laws.
Hey guys, sure thing. So this week, Germany voted to downgrade what was originally a criminal offense for holding and distributing child abuse materials, which is child pornography. It's been knocked down to a misdemeanor. So it's no longer a federal crime worth more than 6 months imprisonment. It's now been downgraded to a misdemeanor with a minimum penalty of 3 months imprisonment.
So I think this started with some conversation around technical matters, like if someone who's innocent but comes into possession of this and they're holding it on their computer to give it to police, people who aren't actually engaging in malicious use of child pornography. I guess there was some technical stuff around that, but then the governing coalition, that's the Social Democratic Party, the Green Party, and the Free Democratic Party, a mostly left and center-left coalition government, they took those kind of technical issues to resolve, and then they ran hog wild with it, just blanket decriminalizing child pornography.
Yep, that's exactly right, Derek. So there was reasoning by MPs that, well, there might be parents or teachers whose child comes across child pornography on their phone and they alert their parent or teacher, and then the parent or teacher downloads the material in order to notify law enforcement. So there are certain exceptions that could be made in the bill to accommodate these reasons. And sure, that may be the case sometimes, but now it's just been blanketly dismissed that we're not going to call this criminal anymore.
So no matter what, so some creeper,
right.
sitting in his basement looking at kitty porn, it's no longer a criminal offense. It's just a minor misdemeanor.
That's exactly right. And in fact, in my research into this matter, I found a pro-pedophilia group based in Germany whose leader was actually celebrating this and posting to members that frequent his child porn website that they should get a lawyer to delay the process until this bill goes into effect, and then therefore their charges will be stayed. So we already have groups that are looking into how to use this ruling to the advantage of pedophilia groups.
I just chip in.
I don't know what the hell to say. So yeah, why don't you say something, Nigel?
Jen, to what extent does this come from the use of kids taking pictures of each other with their cell phones? Is this kind of spun up to such a degree that it's become a problem that needs to be addressed this way?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Nigel, because it did come up that, well, this is becoming more and more common to have these child abusive materials like minors sending each other pornographic pictures. And so while this is a phenomenon that is happening where young people are feeling emboldened to share these images of themselves and others, it doesn't take away from the fact that it is actually distribution of illegal, well, in Germany would be formerly illegal, child pornography materials. However, there are going to be adults who are using this to take advantage of that market as well.
What happens to children, young people, underage kids who do that here in Canada?
I believe that they are susceptible to the same kind of rules of anyone else. It's not allowed for kids to do that. Just because a minor is, say, 17 and with their boyfriend or girlfriend, they share these kind of pictures with each other, that is still, to my knowledge, considered child porn here in Canada, because it is the sharing of these compromised pictures of children.
And what happens to them when they're caught?
I believe they'd be persecuted, but probably as minors and not as adults. But that's an excellent question. That is maybe something I can work on for a follow-up
I've
story.
never heard of anyone being prosecuted for possession of their own images when they're underage. I think it's when you send it to someone else and then they're sharing it from there that criminal activity is considered to have taken place. If a 16-year-old takes a picture of themselves, I mean, it's not wise, it's not good, but I've never heard of an underage person being prosecuted for having images of themselves.
But that's the thing, is here we're allowing judicial discretion. Mm-hmm. If you brought a 17-year-old before a justice and said, we want to charge this girl because she shared a picture of herself that went around, the judge is going to say, get out of my courtroom, quit wasting my time.
Yeah.
You bring in a 52-year-old man with 5,000 pictures of those 17-year-olds on his phone, he's going to say, this is problematic, this is a pedophile, let's get on this.
Yeah, you're going to jail for 6 months because it's Canada.
This sort of excuse and saying, well, we don't know if the person picked up the phone on the train and it had it on it. Yeah. Well, again, that's what you bring to the judge if it gets that far. It's ridiculous to throw a law out because there might be extenuating circumstances.
Well, the good news is the governing coalition in Germany is polling about as weakly as the UK Tories are as they go into a general election. Everyone ready?
Sure.
Are you ready? Just drop it from. Okay. All right. Well, staying with some unfortunately evil Germans, Klaus Schwab, the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, has stepped down from that position. He's going to be stepping into the role of, I guess, chairman of the board of trustees, more of kind of an oversight role, not the day-to-day running of things. He has been the head of the World Economic Forum since it was founded under a different name in 1971. I think most people have heard of it by now. It attracts, I think the last one had 50 presidents or prime ministers from different countries gathered at it. The last of their big confabs in Davos, attracting major CEOs, business leaders. The World Economic Forum is the subject of many a conspiracy theory. Until roughly 10 years ago, most of those conspiracy theories were on the left. In the last 10 years, it's become more of a conspiracy theory of the right. I keep on getting told it's an anti-Semitic one, but I don't understand how. Klaus Schwab is a non-Jewish German, and he looks like Dr. Evil. He even goes out of his way sometimes to dress as Dr. Evil. I mean, it is a powerful organization. It's got revenues of about $500 million a year. He gets paid about 1 million Swiss francs a year, which works out to about $1 million USD. I've never really bought in that it's pulling the strings on governments all over the world. It has obvious influence. It's a very influential organization. But I suppose it's a thin line, Corey, between an influential organization that advocates for some pretty wacky and crazy ideas, bordering on utopian socialism, on the one hand, and a sinister cabal that, secretly runs everything. They don't seem to be very good at secretly running everything because they put all their wacky statements right on their website. They advertise their membership on their website. But I don't know. What do you think the significance is of Klaus Schwab stepping down here?
Well, I guess it depends on who replaces him, because as you said, he presents a caricature of what the head of a shadowy world it's like out of a Bond movie. I mean, they meet in a Swiss resort in the mountains with influential business leaders and political leaders, and they plot. And even as he speaks, it's just like he's trolling. He likes to brag about how many world leaders he's influenced, and he's gotten under this, into the inner circles of. Again, probably overstated by just how much influence he has, but he stirs everybody up when he talks about it. But if somebody more modest and rational is his replacement and coming forward, and it just turns more into an international lobby group, it might calm some of the conspiratorial worries about this group or whatnot. Or it could be somebody as colorful as he is and make it worse. We'll see. But for the time being, he was the symbol of that organization. So it'll be interesting to see how well the organization fares without him being in the front.
Nigel, the World Economic Forum has begun, Klaus Schwab aside, who's kind of leaned into the Dr. Evil look of things, I think it's become aware that its ability to influence, and therefore ability to continue to bring in as much money as it does, is threatened by how it's now become viewed broadly by the right across the Western democratic world right now. His expected replacement, I can't recall the name of it, but he's apparently a former conservative prime minister of some Scandinavian country, I think Norway, but I'm not positive. How conservative is a conservative party in Scandinavia? That's debatable, but I mean, they used to have a lot of prominent conservatives attending these things. I mean, Stephen Harper would go to it, and it wasn't considered unconservative to go. Actually, at that point, the conspiracy theories and the negative press on WEF came mostly from the left. But since then, the WEF has had these crazy things like you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Trying to eliminate cars. But it kind of socialism for the ultra rich, that the people live under destitute socialism, but there's still a place for the ultra uber wealthy to live lives of luxury. Do you think that, is there any way for the WEF to kind of salvage its formerly fairly lofty reputation, to be able to attract people from the right side back to it, and not see it so anathema to the degree that Pierre Poilievre has vowed that no minister of his will be permitted membership or attendance at these things?
Well, of course, Pierre is going to say that, but and so he should. But he himself, I believe, has attended, and so have many other members of the Conservative Party waiting to take government next year. Mr. Harper himself attended a number of times and used the podium there to make substantial public policy statements. I remember one about raising the age of retirement from 65 to 67. Don't want to talk about that particularly, but the point is it was a good place to make a major economic policy statement because it was the World Economic Forum. And the kind of anxiety that has been generated has come since those days. I don't think he would do that now. Mm-hmm. But there's a tremendous number of Canadian politicians have been through, there's like a sort of a lecture program that you go through. They try to expose the politician to their ideas. Sometimes they get recruited right in. I think Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is on the board, but that's not typical. That's not the case for everybody. They basically just want to put their ideas out there. Now, their ideas are nothing that we would support. This is a dreamy group with an ideal in which everybody lives within 15 minutes of everything they need. Nobody has a car. Nobody owns anything. You made that. Schwab didn't say that, by the way. That's but somebody close to him did.
It's one of their position papers.
It's one of their position papers. But, you know, one thing worth noting, this is not a conspiracy organization. Everything is on the website. So when so-and-so says, you know what the West says, and everything, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Well, probably not. You can probably go to the website and find what the conspiracy theorist is actually quoting from. They're very, very open about it. They're just completely
They're
wrong.
The worst conspiratorial secret society ever.
Yeah.
It's all there.
They're just completely wrong.
Yeah.
But they're very public about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible to be dead wrong about policy issues and have significant influence over governments and it not be some shadowy secret cabal.
Well, I almost wonder if it isn't purposeful sometimes. I mean, the way that discussion gets shut down when somebody brings up the Great Reset, it's crazy. Oh, you're talking about the Great Reset. You're a conspiracy theorist. Well, wait a minute. Schwab's book was called The Great Reset. It's right there. It's paged through it, and it's full of looniness as well. But you're not a conspiracy theorist for calling it out. But you know what? It does stop a lot of people from calling it out because they just don't even want to get into those waters. You know, it's just
well, and fair enough, because I mean, some people, you know, on the side that would share, you know, a lot of, you know, some worldview with us, will take it too far, and they will think it's a shadowy cabal and it is secret, and they're wrong in like how open these guys are about it, and so I'm a little hesitant to engage about it sometimes because one side says anything you say about it is conspiracy theory, which is wrong, and then you know some on the other side will say, oh, it is a conspiracy. It's like, no, it's not. They're freaking right there, guys.
The thing is, Derek, they are influential because
Yeah.
when you get invited in there, you're treated like royalty. I've been there a couple of times. You know,
You've been to the World Economic Forum?
Yeah. Well, with Mr. Harper as a
he's been
staffer.
controlled.
Yes. So,
Breaking news here. I did
yeah.
not know.
Well, it's I just unfold like an onion, so layer by layer. But anyway, look, they give you a good time. The women are all beautiful. People are all intelligent. You sit there and listen to the stuff, and when they take the people that they're really interested in, which was not me, I was a staffer, but when they take the people, the MPs, kind of to the back room, and then they sort of lean forward and, now let's talk. It's very, very easy to persuade people in that environment. Mm-hmm. And that's the danger of that organization. If you don't like the point of view that they're pushing, then they're pushing it very hard at the people who represent you. Mm-hmm. That's the problem with the WEF.
All right. Well, let's bring it. Actually, let's keep it international for now. Let's keep it international, and then we're going to bring it closer to home. So, speaking of countries in Europe doing crazy things, Spain, Norway, and Ireland have all recognized the Palestinian state. Now, that's interesting for a few reasons. I mean, I can't foresee there ever being any kind of lasting peace in the Middle East without there being two states, a Palestinian state. But I also cannot see any possibility of the Palestinians accepting reasonable borders of a Palestinian state that doesn't include, as they would say, from the river to the sea. They want the whole damn thing, or they want nothing. Something has been offered several times, and every time it's been rejected, they want the whole damn thing. But and the last time there was an election in the Palestinian territories, you know who won those elections? Hamas.
Resoundingly.
Yeah, they thumped their opponents. And most of those opponents were not exactly modern liberal Western Democrats. They were crazy too. They were just a little less crazy. They were genocidal on, say, Tuesdays and Thursdays and willing to talk Mondays and Wednesdays. That's why Hamas runs Gaza and then...
Hezbollah was West Bank.
No, Hezbollah is...
West Bank.
No, Hezbollah runs southern Lebanon.
Yeah, no, they're in the West Bank as well. That's the West Bank
Is Hezbollah
version of
running?
the Palestinians, yeah.
No, okay, they're all just...
It's a mess over there.
Lovely people, lovely people. Okay, so Spain, Norway, and Ireland have recognized the Palestinian state. Okay, but what is the Palestinian state? Because right now there are effectively two Palestinian states out of the territories. There's the government running the West Bank, and then there's Hamas running Gaza. Which one are they recognizing? Well, ostensibly the last one to win an election, which was Hamas, and is a self-declared genocidal organization dedicated to the elimination of the Jews in the Middle East. This is Cory. We'll go to you. Which government are they recognizing? Are they recognizing Hamas? Because they're the legitimately elected government of Palestine.
They're talking about recognizing a state. Well, nobody's even defined the boundaries of this state yet. That's what they're all fighting over. I mean, it would be a state that's in two parts because the West Bank is completely enclosed over bounding on Lebanon and Israel, and Gaza is bounding on Egypt and Israel down on the other end. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's just so over the top and ridiculous. It would be, I guess, akin to saying post-World War II, we still recognize Germany as Germany, fine, but nobody was going to recognize Germany as long as the Nazis were in charge of the country. Mm-hmm. Right now, Hamas is still running the show. And I think most civilized people would say nothing is to be done with that state until Hamas is gone. As simple as that. And it's like Hamas is trying to remind us of that. Just today, they put out yet another video with 5 19-year-old girls they had, beaten, bloodied, and battered and raped, and literally were taunting them, saying they're going to impregnate them. This is the government that Norway, Ireland, and the others say we should recognize. And I tell you, it's repugnant. It's just repugnant. And our cowardly prime minister, of course, hasn't even touched it or called it out because he won't take a side. Sometimes the sides are pretty clear. And this one's pretty clear. Hamas is filth. They're evil. They demonstrate it to us. And no country for a second. I mean, they could talk about two-state solutions. They could talk about Palestinians. They could talk about Gaza. But as long as Hamas is in there, I can't believe any civilized country is recognizing these guys.
Nigel, I want to talk about these three countries which have recognized, for all intents and purposes, Hamas. Spain, Norway, Ireland. All three, although especially Norway and Ireland, are currently, and I should say especially Ireland, are currently experiencing political chaos as they deal with resistance to large numbers of migrants from the Middle East who, by and large, are very politically and religiously sympathetic with the Palestinian cause. Spain has that issue, but not as extreme. But Spain has a bit of wild hypocrisy here. There's this region, a lot of people maybe don't know. Maybe let's put a map up just to show people. A region, there's two regions in Spain which have long desired independence. The Basque Country and Catalonia. The Basque Country is smaller, so less consequential, but it's actually fought terrorist campaigns, not as extreme as the Palestinians have, but they have launched terrorism campaigns throughout the 20th century in the cause of independence. And Catalonia, which has had referendums on independence, has established independent governments which have supported independence and have faced arrest by the central national government in Madrid. They refuse to recognize independent statehood of countries and nations within their own borders, which have democratically and legitimately voted for independence. But so they won't acknowledge those, but they will recognize statehood and independence of Palestine, which has never been a state, although I think it does have a right to be a state at some point if it can fulfill some very basic benchmarks, but has no legitimate government. The closest thing to a legitimate government that it has is Hamas. So that's a bit to unpackage, but maybe you want to talk about these three countries which have recognized the Hamas government today.
Well, just to your point about Catalonia, my recollection is that Catalonia is the Alberta of Spain. It's a very productive area. A lot of wealth comes from there. Yeah. And they have the same issues as we have with Ottawa, but they have it with Madrid. All the money is going out, not much is coming back.
And they're a bit, and they have some cultural differences.
They have a cultural...
Yeah, they're not Castilian.
But then we have cultural issues too in Alberta. Yeah. So, as we will see at the Stampede. Now, yeah, you're right. There's a great hypocrisy there. With Ireland and Norway, I have to wonder what would actually happen if those two governments had said, not a chance. They now have significant groups of people within Norway, within Ireland, and a number of other places who are sympathetic to Hamas. So what's the deal? Are they going to turn the place upside down if they don't get what they want? Is that the strategy all along, or is it something that has just developed opportunistically? I don't know. I don't pretend to have the answer, but I do know that after what we've seen in the university protests all over the United States, here in Canada to some degree, there's a lot of people who are prepared to make trouble for the governing authorities if they don't give some support and sympathy or take a hard line on Hamas. Maybe the Irish and the Norwegians have decided it's not worth it.
The IRA was never as vicious as Hamas, but let's remember.
Well, they were pretty bad.
It was not. Yeah. It was not your Sunday shooting club. No. I mean, the Irish have a long history of terrorism that worked. That's terrorism does work. It is it is the most economic form of warfare there is. I mean, you can graduate along. You've got nuclear war here, you got standing armies here, and then you've got guerrilla war, and then you've got terrorism. It is war on a budget, and it's very effective. And it did work, at least in large measure, for Ireland. When they tried pitch battles with the British, taking on the British Empire in pitch battle is pretty difficult. But when they launched long, protracted civil and guerrilla and terrorism wars, it paid off. So, perhaps... I don't mean to cast aspersions on the Irish. I don't know enough Irish living in the Republic of Ireland to be able to say and judge the national character. But based on the history, maybe the history is some indication that, hey, we did it, so who are we to judge? I don't know. Cory, I know you're not an expert in Spanish domestic politics, no. But you've written a lot on Alberta independence, comparing it with the Quebec independence movement. I don't know. Would you foresee any trouble here with the wild hypocrisy of Spain here as it regards its own both Basque and Catalonian independence movements, recognizing them when it won't recognize the very democratically legitimate independence movements in its own country?
Yeah, well, if we're talking independence movements getting to the point of the others of seeing, taking violent action, I don't think we'll ever see it in Alberta. I'm not talking about Alberta. I'm talking about Spain. Yeah, or we're talking in Spain. I don't know if their central government is thinking as nuanced or even about, the fact or the hypocrisy within their own borders of recognizing other states when somebody won't. It starts to get complicated. The point you hit on that was interesting, though, or Nigel did as well, is it's just that there's this large and growing cultural and religious, as you said, element of immigrants, and it's a minority, but a very vocal and active one, and throughout Europe and North America that are exerting some very effective pressure on local governments. It's amazing, actually.
Look at the effect they've had here in Canada.
And the tail is wagging the dog everywhere you go. If you run public opinion polls, typically the general populace is, no, we have no use for supporting or anything with them, yet the governments are just terrified of this minority group as opposed to the quiet majority. and they pander to them. And they pandered in Norway. They've pandered now in Spain. And I believe it's probably some of that motivation in Ireland as well. I think your average Irishman couldn't give two hoots what's going on in the Middle East, whether they recognize or don't recognize. And for the government to wade in on something like this, again, shows that, I mean, governments are motivated still more by their domestic standing than what's going on over there. And I think they're worried about the crap they'll have to deal with at home.
Where's the IRA when you need them?
Yeah, well, I don't know, what a mess. But I'm still astounded the democratic nations. I mean, just with the horrors we've seen committed, I can see opposing Israel and getting upset with Netanyahu and many, many things. But to say we should reward these guys with statehood for what they did.
Well, that's it. It is a reward. It's not just recognizing a Palestinian state or even just recognizing Hamas. They're recognizing Hamas and Palestine as a state here, essentially because of October 7th.
Yes.
If October 7th did not happen, recognition doesn't happen. You are rewarding a terrorist organization that is got written into its charter that it is committed to the genocide of the Jewish people between the river and the sea, and you're rewarding it with recognizing it with statehood. I mean, this sends a message to every terrorist organization that terrorism works. And we say, well, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Well, that's not strictly true. We negotiate with terrorists all the time. We just try to do it quietly so we don't inspire others to do the same thing. And now this is very clearly saying you go around and kidnap and murder and rape and make it politically inconvenient and disruptive with political groups domestically in our country. Well, we're going to reward you for that.
The other countries are. But Israel's making it pretty darn clear, we're going to reward you with more bombs.
Yeah.
And they're not going to back down. And there's some of the people saying Netanyahu's got to go. Find Netanyahu's got to. You think another prime minister is going to do any different?
No.
So that's what some of these other countries have got to think a little harder on too. You've got two intractable forces going on. If you really want Israel to calm down, this isn't going to do it. That's just telling Israel, well, we've really got to wipe out Hamas because they're trying to gain a toehold with these other nations. So it's got to go.
Yeah, I mean, there's pretty good arguments for new leadership in Israel. I mean, Netanyahu's been there for a long time. His prime ministership is certainly problematic. It's checkered, putting it politely. There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of good cause to say it's time for new leadership there. But I think you could bring in even a center-left coalition in Israel right now, and I don't think they're giving in to Hamas. They're going to continue the war until Hamas is destroyed.
They're fighting for their survival. Yeah. That's as simple as that.
It focuses the mind when the alternative is death.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're going to turn it a little closer to home now. We're not going to get all the way to Alberta, although it touches us here too. So the federal environment minister is appearing before a committee of parliament, and he's being asked some questions on the carbon tax. He gives a lot of talk, not a lot of answers. But then the deputy ministers, which are the senior bureaucrats reporting to him, I mean, they talk like bureaucrats, but every once in a while they'll say something interesting. Nigel, why don't you set the table about what happened here?
So yes, this is the story we ran this morning, that Mr. Guilbeault was speaking to the parliamentary committee, and he presented as a fact that his carbon tax had reduced greenhouse gas emissions in Canada by a third. Well, actual figures put it at closer to 2%.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a bit of a gap.
There's a little
2% to 33%.
30 or 31% gap. And, when he was questioning, well, I gave you the figures, there's the explanation. So we got these guys who can't, I think you were ranting about this morning, that they can't forecast the weather for a few weeks out, and they want to forecast how much the sea level is going to rise in a couple of 100 years, giving the figures for how much carbon tax has reduced the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. Well, he says, one of them sort of, wow, you don't say so. He says, I will be the first one to recognize that it is complex. And this is where we come to the title of this segment. Basically, he's snowing these guys with numbers. And they're doing their best to keep up. But it's a religious cause for him. And there is no way of arguing the facts on this. You either like the idea of a carbon tax because it punishes people who drive SUVs. You would know.
I drive a truck.
Well, I've seen plenty of smaller SUVs than the truck you drive, sir.
Yeah.
It's
SUVs are just, they take all the gas of a truck without all the benefits of a truck.
Exactly. Anyway, be that as it may. No, he's trying to snow people. I am positive that when we have a change of government, the carbon tax will be the first thing to go. And you know what? It won't make a bit of difference to the amount of carbon dioxide that's emitted in the atmosphere. It's because who is changing their driving habits as a result of the carbon tax? Who is lowering the temperature in their house because of the carbon tax? We're just digging deeper into our pockets to pay for it.
Cory, he really wasn't able to say with any clarity how much the carbon tax has lowered greenhouse gas emissions. But the favorite question I love seeing these guys get asked, and I've never once seen anyone answer it, is how many degrees has the carbon tax changed the temperature of the planet? I know it would be small.
The drought is coming to an end in Alberta, so that's probably because of the carbon tax. If he hadn't imposed it, we would probably have cactus sprouting.
This is the whitest drought ever. It for a while it looked like we could have a drought.
There was a drought.
We didn't have a lot of snow in this winter. The snowpack is small. But I've been following with some amusement. You're a pure troll on Twitter. I see what you do. I see, you're quite amused by it. And just the reaction to this, the screaming that, no, we're supposed to have a drought. The drought proves global warming or climate change now. Yeah. But I suppose if it's really wet, that's climate change too.
Well, that's the thing is when it comes to that, and we've talked about that with Guilbeault. He's the real deal, though. He's not a guy posturing. He really is the green Jesus. He's
I prefer the liberals who lied about this stuff. They were less dangerous.
The entire religious thing about it. So he has no qualms about, just making it up as he goes along. The morality is all about fixing the climate that he thinks he can. And so fudging the numbers doesn't go beyond him. And he believes his own crap is part of it. Even with it going down 2%, how can we attribute that to the carbon tax necessarily? More than likely, it's just due to better modern technology that reduces the amount of fuel we need to use in our vehicles, better insulation in homes, many other things. Mm-hmm. But he's a true believer. As I said, nothing's going to convince him otherwise. And he won't have a moral qualm for a second to just completely put out such blatant baloney. And so many other terms we're trying to use to avoid swearing on here.
Swearing Yiddish.
It's too late.
Where it covers, it's right on the screen.
Where it covers his, his actions. It's just ridiculous. But again, we'll wait until after the next election, and if the carbon tax is gone, and if it leads to the desertification of Canada, well, we'll tell Guilbeault he was right later.
I remember, Nigel, a documentary. I think I saw it on Netflix a few years ago, and it was about flat earthers. And and these guys really believed it. It wasn't just like a joke for these guys. These were real flat earthers. And there's a couple. I think we blow up how many they're actually out there because they're just so funny to make fun of. But they, it follows them around, and there's just nothing that can prove to them. No proof before their eyes that will convince them that the Earth is round. But they put together an experiment. The documentary ends with an experiment of their own. And I forget exactly how the experiment works, but they're like, this is the definitive experiment, and the results are going to prove that the Earth is flat, that there is no horizon. And they perform the experiment, and this is just captured live by the cameras, and their experiment proves that the Earth is round. And they just sit there in silence, just kind of looking at each other, but then they're kind of avoiding eye contact with each other because they don't want each other to know what they all know what they're thinking, but they don't want to see it in each other's eyes. And then the documentary ends when one guy just kind of looks at the camera and says, we screwed it up. We have to redo the experiment. So, these guys are always going to find the right answer. Everything is climate change. I saw a CTV headline today. Climate change causing turbulence on flights, experts say. Everything is climate change. Everything used to be global warming, but that's obviously not the case. But, you know, you had a bunch of rain in, was like Dubai or something, somewhere in the UAE the other month. That's climate change. We have a drought in Alberta. It's climate change. If there's turbulence on planes, it's climate change. What, Nigel, isn't climate change?
Everything is climate change, and the climate has been changing for hundreds of millions of years. You know, we happen to be able to very good at measuring it for the last couple of hundred, but you go to the geologists and ask them to take you down through the stratigraphic record. You'll come to places in the same pile of rocks where here it was wet and there is coal, and here it was dry, and this is sand. We have deserts that look like this today. And then you say, well, how hot was it? Oh boy, you know, and then they come up with their calculations, and I have no more faith in those calculations than I do of the people in the Environment Ministry in Ottawa. But clearly, if you have a kind of a red desert, it probably was hot. And if it's populated with animals that don't live in temperate climes, it probably was very, very hot, you know? So the climate has always been changing. So I would expect that to continue, and to overestimate the human impact on that is the height of human pride.
Cory, CTV says turbulence is now caused by climate change.
I've seen claims that climate change causes insomnia, fertility issues, that it unfairly impacts the LGBTQ community,
Yes.
racialized communities. There is nothing. They will not.
It's because
If you
climate change
stub
is
your toe in the night, it
driving
was
your car is
climate
racist,
change.
so-
Yes, racial, stub my toe. It's just, there's no end. They will attribute without cause. And it shows, yes, when CTV so baselessly, so recently would attribute something so ridiculously as turbulence to climate change, shows that they're no better than Guilbeault when they will just throw out stuff with no basis.
Well, this has got all of the hallmarks of primitive religion. Not even advanced monotheistic religions. I'm talking primitive sun god, sacrificing virgins religion, animism, that kind of thing. That everything has some external cause beyond provable science. That everything can be attributable to this one thing. Are we going to have a good crop this year? It's the gods, and they just have replaced God with climate change. Nietzsche was wrong. God is not dead. He just changed his name and address.
Yeah, anytime you find nature worship, you will find human sacrifice, whether it's actually the human body on the fire, or whether it's humans being asked to, you know, do more with less and so on, to their disadvantage.
You will own nothing and you will be happy. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. And thank all of you for joining us here today on The Pipeline. Remember, if you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, you really should be. The Western Standard is one of the very, very last media left in all Canada, not accepting the federal Liberal government's media subsidy bailouts. We are funded by advertising and membership dues from people like you. Go to westernstandard.news, click on membership. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year, and you'll get full access to all Western Standard content. And critically, you'll be supporting keeping one of the last non-government subsidized media alive in Canada. Thank you very much for joining us, and God bless. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited access